The moment Ethan Ward stepped out of his black car onto the crowded city sidewalk, he thought he was seeing a ghost. There, standing in line at a small bakery, with her hands gently resting on a visibly round belly, was Claire, his ex-wife, the woman he had divorced 6 months ago because they could never have children, the woman 3 different doctors had told was infertile, the woman he still loved more than anything. Ethan's breath froze in his chest. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. The world blurred around him as one question crashed through his mind with the force of a storm. Who was the father? For a man who controlled boardrooms and skyscrapers, Ethan had never felt so powerless. He didn't know how his legs carried him forward, but suddenly he was standing behind her. Her shoulders stiffened when she heard his voice saying her name, a voice she once woke up to every morning. Claire turned slowly, and their eyes met for the first time since the divorce papers were signed. She immediately wrapped her arms around her stomach, protective, as if shielding her unborn child from him. He noticed. It cut deeper than he expected. She whispered his name, barely audible. Shock, fear, and something else flashed across her face. Something like old love. Ethan tried to speak, but the words tangled. "You're pregnant." He didn't mean for it to sound like an accusation, but it came out sharp, heavy, trembling. Claire nodded, her eyes dropping. "It's not what you think. But how could it be anything else? 6 months after she left, after years of failed treatments, tears, fights, and hopeless nights, she was suddenly expecting a baby. Ethan felt betrayal boiling in his chest. Had she lied? Was she already with someone else before she left? Was the infertility just an excuse? Claire didn't explain. She simply said she had an appointment and stepped away, leaving Ethan standing in the cold morning air with more questions than answers. That night, Ethan barely slept. Memories attacked him like waves. Claire crying quietly in the bathroom after another failed test. Him trying to comfort her but burying his own grief. Doctors gently saying there was no viable path. Fights that weren't really fights, but 2 hurting hearts trying to cope. The divorce that neither wanted but both believed was best. He had walked away because he thought she deserved the family he couldn't give her. And now she had it. The next morning, he did something he rarely did. He showed up without an appointment. He waited outside the community art center where she taught painting classes. When she stepped out, he asked her for just 1 hour. 1 hour for answers. Claire hesitated, then nodded. They sat on a bench in the quiet courtyard. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan asked the question he feared most. Was there someone else? Claire's eyes widened with hurt. Never, not for a second. She took a shaky breath. "Ethan, the baby is yours." The world seemed to tilt. Ethan stared at her, stunned. "But you couldn't. We couldn't, the doctors said." Claire shook her head, tears gathering. "I didn't know. I found out 2 months after the divorce. I thought you'd moved on. I didn't know if telling you would help you or destroy you." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel trapped," she whispered. "You were finally healing. You were working again, smiling again. I didn't want to drag you back into pain." Pain, that word burned. Ethan swallowed hard. "Claire, you were never a burden. And a child, our child, that's not pain." His voice cracked. "That's everything we ever wanted." But Claire was not finished. She revealed that after the divorce, she had switched doctors. The new specialist reviewed all her medical records and discovered something shocking. The original tests had been misread. A rare hormonal imbalance had mimicked infertility. With a simple treatment, her body stabilized. And she conceived naturally. Ethan felt fury rise inside him, years of heartbreak. Nights spent believing they were broken. A marriage that collapsed under a truth that wasn't even true. But beneath the anger was something deeper, hope. He asked her if she wanted him involved. Claire's eyes filled again. She whispered, "I never stopped loving you, but I don't want to force you into anything." Her voice trembled, but her honesty was steady. Ethan saw the woman he had fallen in love with years ago, the woman he lost not because of lack of love, but because of too much pain. He reached out and gently placed his hand on her stomach. It was the first time she didn't pull away. "When is the next appointment?" he asked softly. Claire's lips parted in surprise. "Tomorrow." "I'll be there," he said. The next day, sitting beside her in the dim ultrasound room, Ethan saw something that changed him forever. A tiny heartbeat flickering on the screen. His child. Their miracle. Claire looked at him, expecting him to break down, but he didn't. Instead, he smiled through tears, a smile she hadn't seen since the early days of their marriage. That moment broke the last wall between them. The months that followed were not perfect. Ethan had to unlearn guilt. Claire had to unlearn fear. They had to face the truth that love alone wasn't enough. Honesty, forgiveness, and courage were required too. Ethan confronted the clinic responsible for the misdiagnosis, not for revenge, but to prevent another couple from suffering what they did. He and Claire attended counseling together, rebuilding slowly, choosing each other intentionally this time. And when their daughter was born, tiny, pink, and crying loudly into the world, Ethan held her against his chest and whispered a promise to her and to Claire, "This time I won't let go." They didn't remarry immediately. They took their time. He visited every day, helped with every feeding, every sleepless night. Claire watched him fall in love with their daughter, and slowly she realized she wasn't just healing, she was coming home. 5 months later, on a quiet evening, Ethan stood in the same courtyard where they had reconnected and asked Claire if they could start over. Not as broken people, but as the family they were meant to be. She said yes. Their story didn't end with fairy tale perfection. It ended with something better. A second chance built on truth, forgiveness, and a miracle neither expected. And that became the message Ethan often shared when people asked how they survived so much heartbreak. Sometimes life breaks you, but sometimes it breaks you open, so love can grow where it never could before.